VoxCommando demonstration and tutorial. Today I'm talking about a new feature that we're including in VoxCommando version 2245 that allows us to use Google's web speech API in the Google Chrome browser. So you see over here, this is a Google web page that lets you translate your voice into text. So anything that you say shows up in this box. And it works pretty well. I've tried it with a variety of microphones, and it actually does a really good job of getting what you say right, unless you say obscure words. Another nice thing about it is that it's available in a lot of different languages, and even within certain languages like English, you have quite a few variants to select from. That's great. You can type into this box, but how can we actually do something with that? So I've set something up that really harnesses this capability and lets us do things with it in VoxCommando, and I will show you how to do that. So I have a blank installation. Basically, I have no commands really. I haven't set up any plugins yet so that I can show you how to set this up. I should point out that this is version 2245 of VoxCommando, so we're releasing this in December of 2018, hopefully in time for the holidays, and you will need to have this version of VoxCommando or later. You also need to use Chrome, no other web browser, and you should be using a recent version of Chrome. I personally always use the latest version of Chrome, and it updates by itself. So as long as you're doing that, you should be good. What you'll need to do if you don't already have it enabled is go into your options on the plugins tab, enable the TCP plugin, because that's how all of this is going to be made possible, is through the new version of the TCP plugin. Then click Save and Close. Now we need to go into the plugin configuration for the TCP plugin, and we need to enable two things. We need to enable the web server, which is going to host a page similar to the one I just showed you, but using VoxCommando's web server. You need to set it to a port that isn't already being used for something else on your system. So I have a web server already on port 80, so I'm going to change it to port 1990 just because I know that that port is free on the system. Then you need to go into this new tab, the Google Speech tab, and enable Google Speech. And this will turn on a WebSocket that will accept clients from any browsers running that Google Speech web page and allow communication in both directions. So your speech that's recognized will get sent to VoxCommando, but VoxCommando can also send information back to that web page to do things like turning on and off the microphone, changing the recognition language and the prefix, and maybe other things in the future. Once you've done that, you can click Save Settings, and your web server should be up and running, and your socket is ready to accept connections. This checkbox is also important. When you're starting out, you just want to do regular voice commands for sure. You want to have this enabled so that any text coming in from the Google Speech is going to be compared against the voice commands that you've defined in your tree of commands. So if in Google Speech I say show help, when this is checked, VoxCommando will look through all my voice commands. It'll see that this one has the phrase show help, and it will execute this command. So now we're ready. I can demonstrate by clicking the Launch GS button. This will open up the web browser to the correct URL with whatever port you've got set here. And by default, the microphone will be on. In your case, it will ask probably for permission to use the microphone the first time. Then you'll notice that we have a button for turning the microphone on and off. I'm speaking now. We have a language. Right now it's blank, which means it's using whatever language your browser thinks is your local language. And we have a prefix, which is also blank. If the prefix is blank, then everything that is recognized and that shows up here will be sent to VoxCommando for processing. So I'll demonstrate. What time is it? See that what time is it shows up here in green. gets sent to the TCP plugin, and then in the VoxCommando history, it does emulate multiple phrases and what time is it, but nothing happens because we don't have a voice command for what time is it. If you get back a lot of different possible sentences, each one will be compared in turn against all of your voice commands, and the first match will be executed, and then it will stop searching. Again, all of that is only happening if this button is checked. The reason we might want to turn this off is that when you get more advanced, we can create regex patterns that generate events. Most likely you'll want to use both of these features, but in some cases you might not want it to ever analyze for a voice command. You might only want to use it for detecting patterns. And an obvious case of detecting a pattern would be if I want to only use Google Speech for doing web searches, then I could generate an event here that does a web search. But the rest of the time, I might want to use VoxCommando's built-in speech recognition. So let's talk about languages. Here we have an easy way for you to select from many different languages. This list is not necessarily comprehensive. There might be other languages now or in the future that are compatible, and you'll be able to use them using the actions in VoxCommando that let you specify the language. And we may add new languages to this list as well. But I'll show you an example of sending information now from the TCP plugin back to this web page by setting the language to English Canada. Here it shows you the action string, and you can see up here on the language that it's been set to English Canada. I can change it to French from here, Français. See, it's been set to Français. Bonjour, maintenant je parle en français. And here you can see it detected two variations. They were different, so they were both sent to TCP plugin. Tried to do a match, but didn't find anything. Now I'll go back to English. Show help.
These are all of the voice commands for this configuration.
Now another way that you can turn the microphone on and off is through these buttons in the TCP plugin settings. And of course, all of these controls can also be automated through actions. Let's say I create this command so that I can actually use a voice command to turn the microphone off when I say Google Speech off. Again, remember we're using the TCP plugin for all of this, so if you look under tcp.gs, you'll see all of these actions. Or you can look in the, with Magic Wand, action selection tree under the plugin actions, you'll see all of these different actions with the descriptions and the parameters, all that. So this will turn the microphone off. And notice that VoxCommando is off. If I had VoxCommando on as well, we would probably run into, if not problems, then certainly confusion. So in general, I'm going to be leaving this off all the time. You might set up a system where VoxCommando can turn Google Speech on, and then it turns itself off, and then Google Speech can turn itself off and turn VoxCommando back on, whatever works for you. Now to demonstrate this, I'll have to save and close my editor. Google Speech off. Okay, so it detected this text, sent it to the TCP plugin, did emulate multiple. Because we now have a voice command, Google Speech off, it executed that command with the action to turn the microphone off. You can do the same thing if you want to change languages. So you can manually change languages from here, or you can create a command to change languages. Obviously, you can phrase this how you like. TCP set language, oops, sorry, GS set language. And then you need to enter a valid language code here. So one way to find the language code is to set it using the plugin and then look at what's here. So in the case of French, Français here, The code is also shown down here when you change it in the tree. I'll copy this, switch it back to English, and paste this code in here. So now when we say Google Speech French, it's going to switch into the French mode. So I will save my tree and close it. Note that we are in English. Google Speech French. And now you'll see that it's gone through the sequence of events and set the language to French. So you'll notice when your microphone is on and you're talking, there's a lot of stuff happening here. A lot of seemingly random looking phrases are being detected, sent over to the TCP plugin. There are no regular expression patterns, so they're being sent as voice commands. And each one of these is emulating through a big long list of text. So you probably don't want to do that. Therefore, we have the prefix. And if I use a prefix, say something everyone's familiar with, OK Google. When I click set, you'll notice here it says prefix OK Google. And now you'll see everything is turning red. That's because I'm not saying the prefix followed by more words. We're in French now. OK Google, show help.
These are all of the voice commands for this configuration.
So as I'm speaking, everything is red because I haven't said the prefix. If I just say the prefix, OK Google, it's still red because there was nothing after the prefix. OK Google, what time is it? So this is working correctly. I'm going to have to turn the microphone off after this. But even if you babble, 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 and then say, OK Google, show help.
These are all of the voice commands for this configuration.
It works. Now I will demonstrate the use of the patterns with a typical example of why you would want to do this. For me anyway, why I would want to do it. Because VoxCommando for me does everything I need it to in English except dictation. So if I want to get my computer to type something or do a web search, it could definitely be improved by using Google's speech recognition. So I'll show you an example here. You need to understand the basics of regular expressions. But basically, I can put in a pattern, the word type, followed by a space, and then dot star in brackets. And I'll explain this pattern to you now. This means when it sees the word type followed by a space, it will then capture everything in the brackets. The period is a regular expression character that means match absolutely anything, and the star means match it as many times as possible. So basically, this will just capture, the dot star will capture everything after type followed by a space, and because I'm putting it in brackets, it will be captured and sent in the event as a payload. So I'm going to make up an event name. I'm going to have all my events start with GS just so I know where they're coming from. And in this case, it'll be the type event. Now I'll click Save Settings. Okay, so it's going to look at everything that's coming in from here. If there's a prefix, OK Google, then that'll get sent to the TCP plugin. Then it'll look at everything that came after the prefix for the word type, followed by a space, and then it'll capture everything it can and generate the GS type event. And everything that was in between those brackets, in other words, everything that came after the word type and the space, is going to be a payload. And I can use that to do keyboard emulation or whatever I want. So I'll demonstrate. And you do need to save settings before these patterns work. OK Google, type, hello there. And by the way, in the case of using a prefix and it's green, this dot 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 means that there was some text and then the prefix. If you want to see the total string that Google detected, you can do a rollover here. Okay, so type hello there got sent to the TCP plugin, and there was a pattern match, and it generated the event gs type with the payload hello there. Now if you look in the history window over here, you see the gs type event, and if you roll over you can see payload 1 is hello there. So I can use this now to do basic dictation and typing anywhere in Windows. I'll create a command, and I realize this is a bit advanced if you're not that familiar with VoxCommando and events, but this is what you need to do if you want to go beyond just using it for basic speech recognition. I should point out, if you're using VoxCommando SP, which doesn't allow you to use dictation payloads, then you probably will have to use this method. Let's create the command I'm talking about. Just call it type. I won't use a voice command for this. I'll just use the gs type event, so I will take the event and drag it over onto my new command. So anytime that event is triggered, my command will be activated, and it will have payload 1 attached to it, so I can use that in my macro. I think I want to use input keys text entry in this case, and just pass it the payload. Now if I save and close, this should work. Just open Notepad for demonstration purposes. Type, this is a test period. Okay, I forgot my prefix. Okay Google, type, this is a text. Okay Google, type, that was a mistake. I meant to say this is a test. Now if you want to do a web search, you're going to use the same principle. You want to be able to do a Google search for anything. So I'll just use search for space dot star in brackets. I need a different event name so I can trigger a different command. Save my settings. Okay Google, search for adorable kittens. By the way, this can be minimized, this can be closed, all of this will continue to work. But the Google Speech webpage does need to be open. And I'll open this again so that you can see what's happening. So search for adorable kittens. We had a pattern match, generated this event. You can see here, gs search with a payload of adorable kittens. Now we just need to create our command. And I'll take the event, drag it onto my new search for command. Now we want to launch Google. Open URL. Now we need to see how that works. So if I do a test for things, all of this is really optional stuff. This is the form of a web search for Google. So I'm going to copy this. You'll see that if I hit enter now, it does a search for things. So the URL we want to use is, and here, instead of things, we want to use payload 1. So when we say, okay Google, search for X, this command will be run, and whatever we set instead of X will appear here. Of course, we need to save and close this before we test. I'll save just in case to make sure that my regex patterns were registered here. Okay Google, search for adorable kittens. Instant adorable kitten gratification. Thanks for watching. I'm sure there will be lots of questions. I will be posting information on the wiki. Actually, I should point out we already have a wiki page which is very easily accessed from this help button in the TCP plugin. Of course, that page is under development and it's going to be continually changing as we develop the plugin and get user feedback, but that's where you'll find it. And in addition, this version will ship with standard configuration under English called Google Web Recognition Test with a bunch of commands and the TCP plugin already enabled and whatnot if you want to hit the ground running. But if you're starting from your own configuration already, then just follow the steps that I outlined in the beginning of this video to get it set up, and have lots of fun. Bring us your questions on the forum and let's see what we can do. Thanks for watching.